Hi, I'm James.
I'm Katina, and we're connecting with the Collins. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is in the world where you are today, we're just glad that you decided to connect with us. And before we get started with today's conversation, will you do me a favor? Like,
Share,
hit the bell down below.
and don't forget to hit subscribe.
All right, Jay.
All right.
This is it. This is the last conversation in this Loyalty and Decision series.
Yes. And so we're going to dive back a little bit and try to merge everything together. And we're just going to talk about how we came out of the process of it all. Once we discovered some things about the situation we didn't like anymore, people want to know what worked for us in order to get us out of that.
Yeah.
And first of all, I think you just have to be honest with yourself. Honesty is the best policy. Recognize the fact that if you do like a 1 to 10, a actual like a survey, or you write down, like a time allotment, how much do I give to the entity, to your job, to your family, and so on and so forth. And if you be honest with it and you write down, you really discover where I'm putting my earnest time at, my finances at, and then you can make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, and that's so true. We thank all of you for messaging us, for putting comments in the chat, because this topic is so important that people will begin to, as Jay said, start to evaluate where you are currently to make some changes, so you can have better for your life. Again, many of you wanted to know, what did it take? How did we get to this place? And so, we're going to be honest and transparent. Jay, was it challenging for you to make the transition?
Very challenging. Because again, you're loyal. You are connected with your heart and your mind and your body. And so in order to separate it, sometimes it takes God to cut some things out of your life, some areas. And then when you see God cutting those things, it's not going to feel good, because when you get cut on, it hurts sometimes. You feel mistreated. You feel like, what did I do to deserve this type of thing?
This behavior.
But really it's God that's just separating from you from the cause.
It's true.
Yeah.
And sometimes we were talking, God, people say, oh, I'm waiting for the Lord to give me a message or send down lightning from the sky.
Yeah.
But the reality is, God has been telling you 2 years ago it was time for you to transition, that your season was up, or that it's time for you to focus on the family, and you didn't get the message.
Yeah.
So now what he will allow is something sometimes devastating to get your attention and put you in a place where you are almost forced to make a decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And again, sometimes we could be too loyal of a thing to where we're to like a blinded eye. We don't see the road signs, and we miss the road signs because we're so loyal, we're so faithful. Yeah. And again, we're trying to be 100, trying to keep it 100, and we believe our heart's in the right place, but really you're doing your family and other things out of your life a disservice, and to yourself a disservice, because really you're too deep into it, you're too involved, almost to a fault. So the question I asked my wife a long time ago, I said, hey, if you should die, will the VA go on? Of course it will, right?
Yes, it will.
If you're in the church and you die, will they find replacement?
Yes.
Yes, they will. They may grieve, they may go mourn for about a week, but after that week, that church is going to roll on. So my thing is, so you giving that loyalty at a 100%, but is that same entity is going to give you back that 100%? I mean, they'll do nice gestures, but probably not at 100% level, because really, technically, they're going to find somebody else and they're going to move on, and so that's just the nature of the business. So my thing is, well, then if that's the case, then we should look at our lives a little better, and we need to cut back just a little bit. If not, it depends on where you're at on your list. But sometimes it's good to cut back, reassess where you're at, and then you can say you make your necessary changes. Don't be that guy. Don't be that ostrich that buries his head in the sand and not know where you're at. Because it's easy to, that's
true.
It's you're blinding your fact, you're blinding your situation, and really you're cheating yourself. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because one thing you cannot get back is time.
Yeah.
Time moves on.
Yeah, it does. So you mentioned some of the tools that we utilize. You said that we have to you have to acknowledge
where you're at.
You got to acknowledge where you're at. You got to be honest
With yourself.
And you need to assess where you're at. And so Jay, some of the questions and things that came in that people were really asking, was it challenging for you all to transition from a thing that you had been a part of for over 18 years or more, actually, really part of something for over 20 some years, connected with people we called family. And so talk about that challenge. When was it challenging for you?
For me personally, it was definitely challenging because I do everything hard. I love hard. I play hard. And so when I give my all, then I'm at 100% into it. So for me, it was very hard because, God had to cut away of some relationships and some ties that I felt I was a lifer into that. And sometimes, like I think you said earlier in this show, that sometimes we miss the road signs. We miss certain signals that God is trying to tell us. It might be your time up. It's time to move on, go somewhere differently. But sometimes we ourselves are our roadblock. We are our own stumbling block because we don't want to give it up, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? And so we do more harm than good because sometimes we're missing God's signal of saying it's just time to go on and move on. And that could be from growth to other things that God is trying to get you to elevate to, and then your current entity may not recognize all your gifts, and so what they do they'll just keep you in that box or whatever you were doing because you're probably really good at it. Number two, they know you're giving your heart into it, and thirdly, they can't find replacement anyway sometimes, and so it's better for them to keep you there instead of you moving on more into your gift. And God is saying, no, these are gifts that I gave you. Right. So it's time for you to now to do the things that, because in order to get to your full potential, I need you to be able to operate just at this level and not down here anymore. So.
Yeah. Then that's key. And talk about that separation of like the the heartstring and the mind and what that kind of felt like.
So you're definitely going to feel lost. You're not going to understand. Yeah. You're going to try to rationale. Was it me? Was it them? Was it there's something I did? Did I make God mad? Why I'm now in a place where I have to move? You're not going to always understand things, but if you trust God in that situation, then you trust God for the whole thing, because He's not going to take you out of a thing and not give you a destination to move on to something else.
Now that's key.
So definitely, He will show you And there's biblical references that he did to other people in the Bible. Abraham to Abraham, leaving out of his own kindred to move on to an unknown place. But in that unknown place, then God changed his name to Abraham, and as far as he walked, he owned. I'm probably saying it wrong.
David had to leave his father.
Right.
And eventually became king. You look at Joseph.
Yeah.
I mean, so many references.
Yeah.
Because they got better.
They got much better. They grew.
And listen, okay, I won't go there, but
what's the other?
The finances, listen, their entire situation was better.
But the thing is being obedient and go through the process. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that process. I just touched on the hurt, misunderstanding, the cutting of the way, the cutting your heartstrings. God sometimes have to cut those things away. Because let's face it, we're not going to take scissors and cut at anything. We don't like pain, so we try not to deal with pain. Right. But sometimes pain is a part of the game. Sometimes it's part of the process.
Yeah.
Trust God in the process, because the better is the end of the thing
than the
beginning of the thing. Your latter day should be greater than your former day, And so, but in order to get to that ladder, you got to learn how to cross over into that ladder time, and trust God in the process. You're not going to see everything at its full potential right away. Anyway, He gives you in part. Prophecies in part, but when you get done crying and sniffling and all that, still be obedient to God, what He's trying to do. So that's the number one thing that would help me out, is trusting in the God and the provision He has planned for us in our life. Because you're not going to understand in the flesh. You're not going to understand. Your mind is going to be. You're going to try to rationale for months and months, and it's still not going to make sense to you. And so. Not until in proper time God will give you the healing in your process. If you go through surgery and you come out of surgery, there's a recovery time. If you are drug addict, you've been on drugs for 15, 20 years, the hardest thing of coming out of drug is the what did I say?
It's a detox.
The detox. You go through a detoxification that hurts. Because you're coming out of that thing, and sometimes coming out hurts more than you were always into the thing, because the process never feel good. The process, not until you get to the end of the thing of that process, then you'll be like, okay, all right, I'm getting better. You don't forget,
right?
You don't forget, but I feel better where I'm at in the process.
Yeah.
Because why? I can see yourself coming out.
Yeah.
Now you start saying, "Wow, okay, God. Now I understand why you have me leave one place and go to another area." I mean, you could be dying in that place and not know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could be making shipwreck and not realizing. You can be there too long and not realizing,
that you're missing an opportunity that God wanted to use you, or to bless you, or to connect you with the people or the person that was going to take you to your next level in God, right? And so so you mentioned something that was so key as you were talking about that. It wasn't an overnight process.
No. Okay, so nothing is never overnight. Okay, so when in the process of coming to the acknowledgement that it's time to go, there was a ladder of things had to happen, right? So what was normally the norm wasn't the norm. You starting to be on the outs a lot more. You start seeing people do what you used to do. And you want to realize, well, how come I'm not being used in that factor anymore? Now, I'm telling my testimony.
You question yourself.
You begin to doubt. You begin to say, well, do I belong here? What's going on?
Because God's making you uncomfortable.
Because He's making me uncomfortable. He's making me. There's a shaking of the foundation. It's a quickening of. It's a challenge to who you are as a person. Are you going to remain loyal although you start seeing signs that they're not being loyal to you.
Yeah.
You know,
that's key.
And these all little signs and snippets of what God will allow to happen to you, whether it's on your job, or whether it's in an organization, it could be church, whatever it is. Sometimes that, because we're not going to say, okay, I'm out of here, I'm gone. Most of us don't. So God allows it to be rough on us.
Yeah.
So we can start to get the idea, okay, maybe I don't probably don't be here anymore, you know.
And listen to that.
You know.
The other thing, as you were talking and we talked previously, was you know, you're gonna go through a time of grief and loss, because anything that you've been connected to for so long, now you have to your heart and your mind has to begin to transition away from, like Jay had said, from what you once knew to be true, right?
Right.
And so you got to go through your time of grief and loss and clinging to the Father. And if you're married, you need to walk through that process with your spouse. If you're single, you got to get with someone who can be a confidant, that has showed themselves to be trustworthy, who is of sound mind and full of wisdom, that can guide you through the process. Because you again, grief and loss is very challenging, but when you come on the other side of that, healing takes place as you go through that. I mean, your mind, kind of like the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt, after being enslaved for so long, and they were in the wilderness with Moses, and they're like, you should have just left us, you brought us out here to the wilderness to die. But Moses was really their deliverer. Right. And so they're like, we want to go back to Egypt. There will be times, even as you come out to transition, that you think, would it have been better for me to go back? Absolutely not. And so you, as Jay said, you have to trust God in the transition, and keep forward focus.
Yeah.
When the angels told Lot and his family, when they were coming out of Sodom and Gomorrah, don't look back.
Right.
And Lot's wife looked back.
Right.
She died in that moment because she became a pillar of salt. Again, lead me not into temptation, deliver me from evil.
Right.
God, keep me forward focused, away from the thing that is going to cause me death, that is going to cause me anguish, that is going to cause me, you know, to mess up, and whatever that is, that's what you want to that's what you want to do.
Yeah, you want to be obedient to God first of all. And that's the thing. Sometimes we tend to miss God's mark because we want to be still involved with that, and God may be saying it's time for you to go forward and move on. I got a situation that I'm gonna make you overall better, but a lot of times we miss that because we're so involved in the current situation. And so sometimes, you know, we're fortunate that God cut us away out of some things, let things happen that normally doesn't happen, topsy-turvy, your life is upside down. And so finally you're just like, you know what, I had enough, I got the warning signs, I'm out. Pew. So, you know, but then going back to what you're saying, there's going to be a period where you're going to feel alone. You're going to feel a little bit of rejection, despise. You're going to feel like you begin to doubt yourself, your self-worth. You know, there's some of that. You begin to ask your friends, probably, you know, but you got to trust God in it. You trust God to the point of maybe not. Let me rephrase that. Trust God to the point to where you may not understand, but I trust you, God. Yeah. And then when you get to that point, believe that He's going to carry you and see you through, and then He's going to send you the right people in your life to help you come out of that.
That's key.
But sometimes it just, you have to wait on that. You just have to wait on it. You know, that's why it's good to have good spiritual friends that you can talk to. Don't tell all your business. No. Of course, there's some things that's between you and God, but there's some other times where you are going to need a little bit of a guidance. Some leader.
Yeah.
God sometimes might be He wants you to be more into this word. Because sometimes we do church work,
right?
But without having the church, without having the word. Because really, the relationship between you and God has to be first anyway. It has to be first. And sometimes we can do too much church work and not enough of His word that's on the inside. So we mess up because we forget our first works.
Right.
It's not only just in the house, but it's the one-on-one relationship between you and the Father.
Right.
So all that plays a part. Because sometimes we just don't. We're absent from one, and we just say, okay, so I'm gonna give my time and effort to the bishops and pastors and all that, and I give my 100%, but I'm not giving God 100%,
right.
And that's the difference too. And then sometimes, again, you can put them up there, but what you're doing is you're putting them ahead of God, right. Sometimes because you get wrapped up in the man part of the God man.
So, as we get ready to close, would you say that our decision was a good decision?
I think our decision, because I know God was in it, it's really life or death. It's life or death, and because I tell you now that I have more confidence in the God in me than I would ever have if I would have stayed there. Now, that's just my testimony. I'm not saying that church is a bad church. That's a great. I learned a lot. I thank God for that. But I would still be known as Deacon.
Who you were.
Yeah, as Deacon Collins, as opposed to Elder Collins now. And because they respect the wisdom, the God in me, and they trust me at that level to serve at that level. And most importantly, God trusts me. Wouldn't you say?
I would.
And so that's growth. It's growth for me.
Yeah, and we are better. We are better for it, and I thank God for it.
I thank God for God's His leading.
Yeah.
God's leading, and the best is still yet to come for the Collins.
Yeah.
This is just really the genesis of our new life, and I can't wait to see. Yeah, exactly. So instead of dying at 30. Where we are now, we're starting a new chapter, a new beginning. Yeah. So things are. I'm looking for. My expectations are just through the roof because God, we serve a God that can do anything.
Yeah.
And So again, we're gonna stop at this. I think this has been helpful. Please let us know. Type in. Share your comments if we've been helpful. I know it is very easy to be roped into certain situations that we just can't see from the grass from the field. Again, if you have your head just buried in this stuff, you're not going to see what's ahead of you because you're into it. And then people can take advantage of you. Knowing that you're sold out at that point, but my thing is this, that it's best to be obedient, and if God says if you need to move out of that job or whatever else you might be into, because better is the end of thing than it is from where you're at, because you can actually be too long and die. You can die spiritually, you can die naturally, you can die, sometimes you can just die, So my thing, don't play with it, because we are talking about your life. We're talking about your situation. We're talking about, do I want to get better?
Right.
Do I want? And then what you don't want to do is have regret, and say, man, I gave that thing 25 years of my life, and this is how, regret. Don't be bitter, but be better.
Yeah, that's key.
By making better choices, and I'll end with that.
That's good. All right, you all have a great week. This is the last conversation regarding the loyalty and the decisions. The next conversation we'll be having, we'll be sharing some travel tips and tricks. Have a great week.
Take care. We love y'all. Bye.